What's up, everybody? Happy Friday to you all. And we are back talking some Cincinnati Bengals, some NFL draft, and a lot of different stuff going on as we gear up for the big weekend in a few weeks. I can't believe it's already almost here. I'm Anthony Cosenza. He is John Sheeran. And this is the Orange and Black Insider. John, how's your week been going, my man?
It's been good despite classic Cincinnati weather. We've had like on and off rain the past week. I feel like we're always talking about the weather. I'm like aging so fast on this show. I've
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, right. But no, like it's funny you mentioned that. Like we're 20 days away. I think in the past few years, I don't know if this is the same for you, but the draft gets here quicker than normal because we actually have stuff to do in March, whereas draft season like started in like February for people who cover the Bengals because they didn't do anything in March in free agency.
Yeah.
And it always used to feel like just such a drag to get here, but now it feels like it's coming at us a lot quicker, and it's refreshing. I like it.
Yeah, it was a lot of, re-sign their own guys and not many, kind of, for the lack of better words, dumpster dive a little bit towards the end of free agency. And then, we're just really hyper-focused on the draft. And now it's been nice. Like you said, it's been nice to have kind of an evenly distributed focus between the two facets, and the Bengals doing their part in outside free agency and inside free agency. And then doing a lot in the form of hosting some exciting prospects. And John, apparently they have listened to the masses because they are focusing on the trench guys as it goes with the visits. We're going to talk about, just give you a rundown on each of those. What the Bengals have been doing with their top 30 visits and whatnot. And then we're going to play a little game. We've got a fun game to play. We're calling it Wheel of Tackles. And so we will go through that. We'll tell you about that in just a second. I don't know. We're just goofing around and having some fun, trying to mix things up a little bit here instead of our standard previews and that sort of thing. So let's get started here, John, with the visits. I mean, the reports have been coming in pretty furiously, and forgive me, I don't know who it is on Twitter. I wish I could post their account.
I think it's Billy Marshall, Billy M.
Yeah, at Billy M. That's right. He keeps posting a lot of stuff from those prospects specific. It looks like their Instagram or other accounts there, kind of showing them in Cincinnati, that sort of thing. And so that guy's been a big help. Go follow him, kind of getting some news updates here. But John, the Bengals have been focusing on defensive tackle and offensive tackle. There's some other players in there as well. I know, like Eric All, Iowa tight end, and some others that they've been hosting, but it's been a lot of tackles on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, there's been about, I think, 10 or so, maybe 12 reported top 30 visits, and the vast majority are defensive tackles and offensive tackles. It's almost to the point where I'm starting to wonder if these guys are passing each other in the airport, where one guy is getting off his flight, excited to check out Paycor Stadium, and the other guy is just now leaving, giving him kind of the insight of what is to expect. But just to run down this list, there's been 4 reported, not just defensive tackles, but nose tackles specifically, big-bodied, run-stuffing guys who are all probably above 310 pounds at the bare minimum. Justin Rogers out of Auburn, Mason Smith out of LSU, McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M, T'Vondre Sweat out of Texas. T'Vondre Sweat is obviously the most notable of those 4. He's expected to be drafted before any of them. He's probably in that second, maybe early third-round range, which is where the Bengals pick in the second round. But there's been a lot of connections between the Bengals and him. Obviously, looks like the most DJ Reader type nose tackle in this class. He's like 366 pounds. There's questions about whether he can maintain that weight. I'm sure that's probably what that specific visit is about, considering that's an outlier in terms of can he manage that weight? What are the plans with that? But also just that's an obvious fit for what the Bengals need. Just he dominated last year with Texas at that weight, and he was an even better pass rusher than I think people give him credit for. But McKinley Jackson is no snub too. He's projected to go in that late third, early fourth round range. Mason Smith, I think, is rising up draft boards a little bit, or maybe quote unquote rising up. I think the media is maybe catching on to the hype a little bit. He was in Daniel Jeremiah's top 50, so I don't know if the Bengals can draft him with their second round pick. But Justin Rogers is more of that late round guy. But a lot of nose tackles there, and on the offense side of the ball, you've had, I think in order, Troy man, Dan Horb just pronounced. He posted the pronunciation of his last name. I'm gonna butcher it. I'm gonna call him Fontano for now, but I'm gonna
Fontanu?
Yeah, Fontanu. He came in earlier this week, and he was followed by Marius Mims, and then Talisi Fuaga. So obviously, pretty obvious fit there. All guys who can play right tackle and are expected to be drafted where the Bengals pick at the 18th pick. A lot of times, Anthony, like these top 30 visits are guys who are projected to be drafted late or maybe not even drafted at all, so they can establish some type of relationship. So when the time comes for undrafted free agency, they're quick on the phone and they have some type of connection already with them. But a lot of these guys are going to be drafted, and I think this is just them doing their absolute due diligence on the two most obvious needs that they have.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear Sweat and that weight, one, a part of you makes you kind of almost salivate in this division, right? I mean, because that's that big body, that guy who just takes up space and blockers. I mean, that's what you need in this division, particularly when you play, all these teams that have great rushing attacks, and you just need some strength and some oomph up front. That's what DJ Reader brought you in. When you're hearing Sweat, what was he, 360, something like that, is kind of what he's been weighing around at. It does give you a little, the other side of you kind of worries about the old Tyler Shelvin effect, right? Where you go, oh man, how's this going to translate to the pros? But I think a lot of people are pretty highly sold on Sweat. He's probably locked into that second round right now, just because I think, number one, he's a very talented guy, but I mean, I feel like maybe there's a little bit of snap limitations in terms of what he can do as, maybe not potentially a 3-down player, but a guy who should give you a lot of valuable snaps in a defense. And then, of course, like you mentioned, all the tackles. And we'll talk about this on our little game we're going to play in a little bit here. But I mean, some of these guys too, where you draft, and what makes sense is, I mean, I think we all like Cordell Volson to a degree. But I mean, I think that's the one spot on the line at this point where you say, well, I mean, that's really the only spot left that they would probably make they could make an immediate change or immediate upgrade if they felt needed. And some of these guys, you mentioned them, Fautanu and Fuaga, are guys maybe that could be guards and then groomed into tackles type of thing down the road. If you wanted to get them in the lineup right away, they've got the talent to do that. So a lot of interesting players. Eric All, he's been linked to the team a couple of times now, the tight end from Iowa. And, I think you go, well, I mean, what the hell, just take him. I mean, tight end from Iowa, why not? Right. I mean, get the value out of it, but the track record of that position from that school is just so outstanding of late that you go, man, just take the guy. So there's been a lot of, smoke signals there, so to speak, with the Bengals and Eric All. And, they brought in a couple of corners and other positions as well. But like we said, man, it's been offensive linemen, offensive tackles, and, defensive tackles. And that's, the Bengals made the big move for Trent Brown in free agency, but it's definitely a short-term one. So they are looking for long-term answers, both in the, with the departure of DJ Reader and then a tackle. There's been some news this week, a little bit, not to totally deviate, but we're talking defensive tackles. A little bit of news it was DJ Reader going on Kay Adams' show, talking about the process and, kind of what, I don't know that he said that he felt slighted, but I think he was maybe a little taken aback by maybe the perceived ennui, so to speak, or lack of interest or lack of kind of oomph by the Bengals to offer a big contract to him. I personally, and it's not against the player, because DJ Reader is outstanding despite the injury. I just have seen this team operate for a long time, and I've seen this group of thinkers, this group of the front office, including the staff, operate a certain way as guys get to a certain age or get coming off of an injury. You can look at Larry O the same way. It didn't surprise me, and I say that again, not as a slight to DJ Reader. It's just kind of feels like the team's MO a little bit when it comes to free agency.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he essentially said there were no talks, which it counteracts or
Like
contradicts what
beforehand,
Duke
right?
Tobin. Yeah, it contradicts what
Yeah.
Duke Tobin said to us at the combine, which was they were talking to him. There was some type of communication leading up to free agency. I think what Reader was referring to was there was an offer on the table. It wasn't obviously as much as what Detroit offered, which was 2 years and 22 million. And once it got to that point where Reader's like, okay, I feel like this offer is just not good enough, but there wasn't enough communication back for the Bengals. They were pretty much holding their ground and saying, "Nah, that's our price. We're not really willing to wiggle off of that." Not in the sense that they didn't want to keep him, but in the sense like what Anthony just said. Like, I mean, like that's just what they do, right? That they hardly move in these negotiations. So then Reader, once free agency arrived, I think he was at that point saying, "I need to survey the rest of my options to see what else is out there." Detroit was obviously interested. They were interested in him from the start of legal tampering. By all accounts, the Bengals were still interested when he was in Detroit. They weren't giving up on that just yet, but once Detroit made the offer and was, notably larger than what the Bengals offered, then the choice is clear. So I think that is where those comments kind of stem from. The fact that there wasn't this aggressive renegotiation to match Detroit's price. I think you hit the nail on the head there. There was a price reader, and the Lions exceeded it, and the Bengals like, all right, let's go, move on.
Do you see, because we're not doing the wheel of defensive tackles later. We're doing the wheel of offensive tackles later. So in Sweat, do you see a guy that has, I mean, he's bigger, weight wise, at least. Do you see Reader similarities there, or it's hard to send a guy that way coming out of the draft? But I mean, do you see him being able to do at least some or most of the things that Reader was able to do in this defense?
I think out of all these defensive tackles, he's the most athletically capable of two gapping at the level that Reader could. Now, that's an extremely high bar to set because
Right.
like
Right.
the way that Reader was doing that was unlike
Exceptional.
99%
Yeah.
of other nose tackles in the league. And of course, this was a very seasoned, experienced DJ Reader. The Bengals got him at his prime in his late 20s. So there's still plenty of room for not only Sweat, but the Jacksons, the Mason Smiths, and the Rodgers to grow in that regard. But I think Sweat does have a lot more athleticism in the tank than some of those guys. Relative to his size, of course, just looking at the raw testing numbers, you don't really foresee Tavondre Sweat as a great athlete, but I think he's got some nimbleness, especially for being north of 350, 360 pounds. So that is good. I think he's got that lower body flexibility to kind of take on that power from multiple blockers, which is needed. Like if the Bengals don't want to shift too far schematically and they still want to have that two eye, two gapping on the backside of those runs, I think Sweat does have the most capabilities to do that. It may not be pretty initially, and I don't think anyone should expect that, but in his prime, yes, I do think that he's capable of something along that level.
And I think because you mentioned his name, the Bengals. You probably said it, and I may have missed it, but the Bengals hosted Mason Smith, right? Or they've shown
Yes.
interest in Mason Smith, the defensive tackle there. Really intriguing player, young, and shows some athleticism, but I think there an injury issue there. I mean, his background's kind of all over the place a little bit. So interesting player though, Mason Smith.
Yeah, he suffered a torn ACL, I want to say, at the beginning of the
Right.
2022 season. This was coming off a really promising freshman season in 2021. He was a five-star recruit going to a big school, and he was playing really well for being, 18, 19 years old. So then that injury kind of
Right.
derailed, I think, his chances of being like a first-round pick by any means because he lost that whole second year. And 2023 was like a decent season, but I think teams are still looking at that early film and thinking maybe we can unlock this. And he's 6'5", 305 pounds, but really long arms, which obviously helps with disengaging multiple blockers. So he's kind of played all over the line at LSU. I know draft guy Jared really likes him at nose tackle. I'm interested to see what the Bengals do because I could see them having him play 3 technique and 5 technique and 1 technique, during his time here. So there's a lot of room for him to grow for sure.
Interesting because we talked about how the Bengals approached or didn't their approach with DJ Reader and how that just kind of plays into who they've been a little bit. This an interest in a player and maybe a move for a player like Mason Smith is kind of harkens back a little bit to kind of the early mid years of Marvin Lewis's tenure, where you get those talented players that got some, you hope you can mine it out of them, right? Just some guys that have some question marks, not necessarily character, but just, guys that showed you a little bit. And then there's, sometimes it worked out for him. Sometimes it didn't. I mean, you can go along the lines with some of these other guys like Dennis Weathersby, if you remember that name, and a lot of other players where you go, man, there's the talents there, but some things got in the way or that sort of thing. And so I think that's what intrigues a lot of people about Mason Smith and the Bengals, especially with the need that they have for depth and everything on the defensive line and at defensive tackle. We're going to go and move on to offensive tackle with a fun game in just a minute. Just want to remind everybody, if you are new here, you can get this show, the Orange and Black Insider, on your favorite audio streamer: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones. We are there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That'll always be accessible to you underneath John Sheeran there by that Cincy Jungle icon. You can click the Orange and Black Insider Show icon. Click that. A subscribe button will pop up. Click that. Click the bell to be notified when we go live and when new content is available. And of course, give us a thumbs up on the video if you like what we're doing. Check us out. We stream live on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page as well. And then, of course, if you're watching us, we got a lot of people watching us on the Cincy Jungle Twitter handle, as well as some of our other personal handles. So go follow us there. We stream live and shoot it out there to you as well. So thanks for all the support. It's been a long, long time since we've been doing this show, and we appreciate the support. Our schedules have been kind of wacky. We've been doing different days and all kinds of different things, but appreciate you all hanging with us, especially on this Friday afternoon. Okay. Game time. We're going to do something different. And this may look hokey to some people, but whatever. I don't care. We are going to do there's a lot of, we've done our profiles how we normally do it. We usually spotlight one or two guys, a rookie profile, and then we say, okay, we spend like 5 minutes, 10 minutes on them sometimes, depending on the position and the film that we have and all that kind of stuff. And what we want to do is try and get to more because draft's coming upon us here. We've talked a lot of free agency, and we're trying to get to more players to profile. And so what we did is we did a wheel of tackles, and it's offensive tackles. And we just talked about the visits the Bengals have had with some of these players. We've got, a number of other players that if the Bengals opt not to go offensive tackle in the first round, there are options in the second round and maybe even third round, depending on how you look at some of these guys. But we kind of did some of the usual suspects and a couple of other players here. So I'm going to share this. Here's the wheel. We've got Fuaga Fashanu, Olu Fashanu, Amarius Mims, JC Latham, Troy Fautanu, Tyler Guyton, Kingsley Suamataya. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Morgan, Paul, and Alt. Now, Alt might be a little bit of a pipe dream. So, who knows what that, but Morgan, not a guy that not a lot of people are talking about. He's out of Arizona. And then the other kid there is was it Missouri? We got to look. Anyway, we've got a lot of guys here, like 10 guys, 12 guys, that sort of thing. So we've got a lot here. We're going to put our skills to the test. What we're going to do, John, and we're playing it by ear here. What we're going to do is we're going to spin. It's going to go. Do we want to, I'm leaving this up to you. Do we want to both say something about the player, or do we want to go one by one?
Well, let's go one by one. Let's go one. Keep it easy.
Okay. And so what we'll do is we'll give a couple of one word or, small phrase adjectives to describe the player, how we feel about them, what we've seen. And then of course, talk about how they may or may not fit in with the Bengals. So without further ado, John, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay. I like that. Thank you for volunteering your effort.
Spin that wheel.
All right, here we go.
It's so exciting.
It is exciting. Okay. Guyton.
All right.
Yeah. And we have a winner, Guyton.
Yeah, Tyler Guyton.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, come on down, right?
Yes.
Okay, so talk to me about him.
Tyler Guyton, I think, is very polarizing amongst the Bengals draft community. He's from Oklahoma. I think he's got the correct required size to last out there. He's like 6'6", 320, 34-inch arms and whatnot. But there's a lot of polish that needs to be there. I think the base for his game is promising, but asking him to start immediately can be potentially disastrous because again, there's not a lot of pure stable experience, and the production with that experience is not great. I think if he lands with the right coaching staff and gets a year or two of seasoning, he can be a solid starter because he's got the baseline athleticism and obviously the size. I don't think there's like a strength issue here. I don't think you're looking at a Cedric Ogbuehi, but if you're expecting him to start immediately, I think that is a little bit dangerous. And the fact that he's already almost going to be 23 years old may rub people the wrong way. But I'm not as out on Tyler Guyton as other people are, even if, like he's projected to go late in the first round, early second round.
Yeah, it's the experience thing. It's, looks the part, maybe not always plays the part type of thing. But a guy I think that a lot of people would, there was a report the other day from what's that? Albert Breer from SI, talking about, I think, the Patriots or something, and some sort of or the Bears maybe, and talking about Guyton being in play at number 9 because there was a visit there or something. I think people were like at number 9 for him. So I think this is one of those, late first, probably, people get enamored with what's there and how can you work with them. And you take on a developmental guy. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a guy that will make sense for some teams that will have some patience. And maybe that is the Bengals. Maybe that's a team that, where the Bengals are like, hey, we've got our tackles next year. So, maybe we can mold this guy into who we want, particularly if he falls farther than they expect him to. So interesting player there. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. And a guy that I haven't seen a ton of chatter about him with the Bengals, but a guy that makes a lot of sense. Now, if for some reason we spin and we get the same person, we'll spin again, right? Is that just so we don't keep talking about the same guy? Isn't that what we want to do, John?
Yes, and I just want to correct myself. He's 6'8", by the way, not 6'6". I read that wrong. So really tall.
Yeah, he's a big guy. Yeah, really tall guy. Yeah. All right, we're gonna roll it again. Oh,
now, this
John.
Is perfect.
John. Yeah, oh man, I was worried. I'm like, oh wow, who am I gonna get here? Who am I gonna get? And lo and behold, it is my guy, Talia Sifuaga. Look, for me, tenacity, run blocking, AFC North. That's who this, and I think he is my favorite tackle in this draft, and not because I think he is maybe the best or will be he may or may not be the best. I still think, if you rank the tackles in terms of skill and everything, Alt's the guy, right? Alt's the guy that's going to be your 10-year, starter and, all that kind of stuff. This to me is just my favorite tackle in this draft. And I think he's my favorite tackle just for this division. And when we previewed him earlier, that's what I said about him. I love the tenacity. I do like the possibility of him doing what maybe another Pac-12 guard could do, a tackle could do, is play guard and then go develop as a tackle. The short arms worry me. That's what worries me about. I think that's what worries everybody about him, really, at tackle. When the Bengals had a short arm tackle at left tackle and right tackle, and Jonah, that showed up on film, and there were struggles there, particularly against athletes. But I think this guy can hold up. And what I worry about is if he is not a Bengal, it's that he will be somewhere else in the AFC North, because I think he fits this division so well in what these teams want to do. And so I love this guy. Again, probably not the most overall talented, measurable guy, but I think he could be. There's a big if, but because of the arms and everything, but I think he could end up being one of, if not the best tackle of this group, if placed in the right situation and develops the way we all hope he does.
I think no matter where he goes, if someone puts him at guard, he's going to be he's going to be a multi-Pro Bowl guard. I truly think that highly of him in that regard. I agree with everything that you just said. I think he would work phenomenally with at least 3 AFC North teams. I just really worry about the fit of the Bengals because of just their offense and how it differs from a lot of other offenses. When you're dropping back straight up 40 times a game and you're going up against the best pass rushers in the world, it does. The lack of length does give me pause. And I know people compare him to Penei Sewell, even if that's ridiculous because Penei Sewell is the best right tackle in the world. The length is similar, but I think it does show up more with Fuaga on the edge, which is why I think he would just be his best, most consistent self inside, or in a scheme where it's like Kyle Shanahan, where you have tackles who aren't taking many true pass sets, and you are moving guys a little bit, before the snap, and there's a lot more variability with that type of scheme and whatnot. But with what the Bengals do with Joe Burrow, Fuaga as a tackle, I think he will be a little bit more inconsistent and may not be his best self, despite all the positives that he is. Because you're right, he's powerful, he's tenacious. Like the grip strength is incredible. The overall density is great, and the athleticism is good too. But I do think it shows up a little bit too often on film, which is why I think for the Bengals' sake, he's probably a guard compared to almost every other team where he's a tackle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's spin her again and see what we come up with. John's up here.
Two good options. We got two.
Oh my gosh. And then we go to, I swear we didn't do this on purpose. I swear this is a random wheel that is spinning. And I know that this is my guy, John's guy here. At least one of, obviously Alt and others, but talk to me, John, about Amarius Mims. We did preview him recently, but you, I believe, mocked him to the Bengals recently in your mock draft on ADZsports.com.
I did mock him because I do believe that if Amarius Mims is there, he's going to be the pick. And we want to talk about polarizing with Tyler Guyton. I think Amarius Mims might be even more polarizing because there's just a contingent of people who think that no matter what happens, he's always going to be hurt. And the truth of the injury history is he suffered an ankle injury in week 3 of this past season, required tightrope surgery. Unfortunately, with that can come the possibility of, if not healing right, re-aggravation of that injury and then potentially a hamstring injury, which is exactly what happened over the course of the next few months. But the path of him to the NFL matches almost directly of Broderick Jones, who was the 14th overall pick from the same school, a guy who didn't play as a freshman, who still couldn't play as a sophomore behind a really good starter, but stayed in the program, stayed with one of the best teams in college football, and then got his chance to start. And when he has started, he's looked phenomenal. He's 6'8", 340, 36-inch arms. No question about his size or his length or his ability to stay at tackle. He's a dancing bear, dude. Like, he may not be the most powerful guy for that size, but he can still obviously displace people. There is a sense of power when he just gets your hands on you, and he can obviously move people, but he is so nimble for his size. And I think just the combination of size, length, and athleticism, he truly does give you an answer in this particular offense when, again, you're facing the best edge rushers in the world multiple times a year, and you want to pass the ball 40, 45 times a game, which may not always be optimal, but he gives you the chance to do that and allow your quarterback to remain unharmed because he can pretty much protect any edge rusher with that size and athleticism so long as he develops properly. And you're not going to ask him to start immediately because Trent Brown's in there, but Trent Brown may get hurt in the middle of the season, and with some seasoning and obviously him resting that ankle and getting right, I think by the time he's asked to start, he'll look the part for sure.
The pendulum swings wildly with Amarius Mims. I mean, he has every opportunity to become the most talented and best tackle in this class, or he has the opportunity to be a guy that just is, oh boy, it's the old, highest ceiling, lowest floor potentially type of situation with him. I love a lot of things about him. And I think if you are the Bengals, you're not talking about using a top 10 pick on a player with this wild pendulum. You're close to pick 20 at this point, where you would grab him and say, well, maybe this is worth the risk here instead of a top 10 type of pick, even though the skills warrant the top 10. I mean, my hesitation with him really is, we've seen some of the high athletic guys that end up, Mekhi Becton was the same kind of guy, big athletic profile, huge guy, and really has not materialized, and the injury stuff has followed him around. And there are other examples too, but I like a lot about this guy. There is just a lot of risk with him. And we discussed that a lot last week, but huge, athletic. Frank Pollock talked about him on Dave Lapham's show with this just gushing grin on his face. And I mean, there's a lot to like there for sure. It's just a matter of, can he put it together? Does the experience, the inexperience rather, does that ruin it for some people, that sort of thing? I don't know, but talented player for sure. And a guy I think is on the short list for the Bengals. It's going to be interesting to see what they do here. Do they go with the guy with the big risk and the big upside, or do they go kind of with someone who is, someone that they feel has, a higher floor, a little bit safer pick? All right. So the next one is Sua Mataya, a guy that, BYU, another guy that gets talked about some, but really talked about as a second round pick. I think a guy that could do a number of different things for the Bengals. It's hard to. This is such a deep class, and so I think when you look at it, you go, okay, if you're getting a guy in the second round, should he let? And again, there's all this talk. Oh, he'll never make it to the Bengals in the second round. We say that stuff every year about guys, and it ends up happening, or does guys go way earlier than expected? All kinds of different things. But this is a player I think would be a pretty sound fallback option for the Bengals if they opt to go elsewhere in the first round. I think he would still potentially be there in the second, because there's, some people don't even have him in the top 10 tackles of this class, but he's a talented guy and a guy that he's young, which is, he just turned 21 in January. So, I mean, he's on the younger side of things, still developing, and, 6'6", good size, about 330. I like the kid. I think he, in another tackle class, he'd probably be, more fringe first round or definitive first round type of player. There's just a lot of talent and a lot of guys with a lot of athleticism and length and size in this class. And so, I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. Does Kingsley Suamataia, but a really solid. I think he would be a solid player. Maybe the floor is a little higher than some, but the ceiling's a little lower than others. But I think if the Bengals go a different route in the first round, Suamataia would be a good guy to target in the second round to solidify things. And the Bengals have, grabbed some guys in the second. Remember Andrew Whitworth? He was a second rounder, right? So, I mean, they've grabbed guys in the second where you go, well, maybe not at the top of everybody else's tackle board, but they end up being, pretty solid players. They brought Bobby Williams in free agency, and he was a good guard for them for a long time. He was a former second round pick. So, I mean, they've made some things in the past out of second round picks. And I think that's where, Suamataia would probably be.
I mean, you mentioned second round picks. Jake Fisher, I think, was a better prospect than people remember him. I think he was a better NFL player than people remember him. The people kind of, include him with Cedric Ogbuehi as like the failed experiment, but I think there was a lot more promise with Jake Fisher. Suamataia is like a powerful Jake Fisher, because Jake Fisher has never had that much pop to his game, but Suamataia might be, and I say this knowing who Amarius Mims is, he might be the most natural athlete for his size. Like, it just shows up with power and fluidity in his movements. Like, he was being talked about, I think, before the college football season, as like the best overall athlete in this offensive line class. I think it was Bruce Feldman, who does his annual freaks list. He was raving about like the workouts that he was putting together. He was out working out Penei Sewell, and I think they might be related. I want to say, I will have to double check that, but no, like, just such a natural athlete that's still extremely raw, just like Fisher was pretty raw out of Oregon. And there's a lot of that in his tape too. Like, I think his overall hand usage definitely needs a lot of work. And I think you have a good point. Like, in another class, he would probably be taken like in the top 25 picks, and that may be a little bit rich compared to who he is right now. So I think that just the natural depth of the tackle class is going to have him being picked probably where he belongs, which is in that early to mid second round pick. And I think that's an ideal spot for a guy like him, because players and athletes like him shouldn't fall out of the top 50. But once you have that first round label on you, the expectations are a lot higher to produce immediately. So if the Bengals can get him in the second round, if they don't take a tackle, I think that's like a perfect scenario for sure.
Yeah, 31 bench reps with, what was it, 34 and a quarter arms. So I mean, that in itself is pretty impressive. Again, a guy that I think, not talked about as much as some of the usual suspects in the first round, but a guy I think could be of use to the Bengals. Like you said, some developmental things need to happen, but the strength is there. The functional strength is there. The athleticism is there. It's just, again, when you're going in the second round, there's going to be some knocks on some of these guys. But, again, if the Bengals go, you get your Newton or Murphy in the first round, and then you come back and you get Suamataia in the second, that's a pretty good first couple of rounds for the Bengals, I think there. Let's get to a few more here. And as we pull up the wheel of tackles here,
Sumatai
John.
is
All
Sewell's
right,
cousin, by the way.
we've done. Yes, that's right. Can't believe I omitted that. So we've done Sumatai, Tyler Guyton, we've done Amarius Mims, Taliese Fuaga, and that's it to this point, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Were you like, don't?
No, I was
Yeah.
hoping
So
we
this
didn't get a
is an.
repeat.
Okay. So this is a guy that has not been talked about a ton. We've talked about Mims, we've talked about some others. Some people have him in their top 10 of the tackles in this class. Some people do not. This is Javon Foster out of Missouri. Another big guy, 6'6", about 310, a little leaner than some of the others, though.
Are
Oh
you
no,
reading Foster? I'm
Morgan.
reading
I'm sorry.
Morgan.
Yeah, I thought it said Foster. I'm sorry. Morgan. Sorry. Go ahead.
There. I was like, my eyes not working. Okay, yeah. So Jordan
Yeah,
Morgan,
no,
another.
I read the wrong name. Sorry about that.
Now you're good.
Jordan
Another.
Morgan. This is Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. I mentioned him earlier at the beginning. Out of Arizona.
Yes,
Older guy.
Jordan Morgan, 22 years old, out of Arizona. He was there for like a handful. He was there for 5 years, I think. So not as young as some of the other high-profile tackles, and also 32-inch or sub 33-inch arms, which
Yeah.
definitely is a concern. The overall, like, I mean, I think the size in general is fine as a tackle, aside from the length. The wingspan is also 81 inches, which is about average. So it's not like he doesn't have any broadness to him, but the overall reach is a little bit of a concern. But another phenomenal athlete. This is honestly a really athletic class of tackles, and I think Morgan had really quality tape against Latu out of UCLA, who is also kind of a maybe not undersized, but length isn't necessarily in his game. But I think that speaks to the athleticism as a pass protector and just the overall technique and development. So he's been in college for, quite a few years. He's one of the more experienced tackles in this class, over 2,400 snaps at the position at Arizona. So I think he's ready to start, whether that be a tackle or guard. I think there will definitely be some teams who see him at guard. I think the Bengals will probably see him at guard with that arm length too, but I think just a ready to play player with enough athleticism to be a high floor guy.
Yeah, the tape, your point about the tape against Latu is a really good one. And man, the Pac-12, despite it being disbanded mostly, they have some really talented offensive linemen in this class. And when you talk about Fatanu and some of the others in the Fuaga in the conference, I mean, this guy kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. Again, the arms, the overall length, that sort of thing, that worries you a little bit at the next level. But experienced, like you said, battle tested, went up against one of the premier guys who's probably going to be a top 15 pick in Latu there. And so there are things to like here. Again, this is probably more a night two guy. The age worries you a little bit too. So you go, okay, how much room to grow into a ceiling does he have, at that age? Because I think is he redshirt senior? I think he was. So yeah, redshirt senior. So I mean, he's definitely older, and that's something that teams will have to weigh. But again, if the Bengals do a couple of things where you go, maybe this draft goes a little different. If they let's say they go defensive tackle and then corner or wide receiver or something with your first two picks, and then all of a sudden you're in the third round and a guy like that is staring at you, go, well, I mean, this may not be another bad fallback option here, as opposed to going in the first round. He's not a first rounder to me. He's probably fringe top 10 as a tackle in this class. Depends on where other teams see him, but there are more concerns about him than some of the others on this wheel. That is for sure. So let's, speaking of the wheel, let's bring it back up. Sorry again for the slip up on the names there. I read the wrong name. My brain was elsewhere. Okay, so let's go. I think we're going to get a repeat here.
We're loving that side of the wheel, though. I feel like there's some other guys.
I know it's heavy on that. Yeah, it's heavy on that side of the wheel. Let's try again. Before the confetti even goes away, we're rolling again.
There we go.
Okay. Polarizing guy, JC Latham. This to me is a guy that I think, for the most part, big school. There's a lot of stuff here with this guy that I think would play right into the Bengals' hands, their preferences, that sort of thing. Big school. There are a couple of major question marks for me with him though, John. I believe, he opted not to test, right?
Correct.
So that gives you pause to wonder how he actually moves and what, I think he did some stuff at the combine and kind of tweaked something. And so then at his pro day, he said he didn't want to do it. He's 6'6", 360. He is a junior, so he's still on the younger side of things. He started 26 games though, which you like, and all at I think they're all at right tackle. And then he was reserve guard as a true freshman. So I mean, this was a guy that came into the program at Alabama with high regard. He ended up playing pretty well, all the starts at right tackle, which is what the Bengals are seemingly needing going forward long term. And, a guy that, look, the lack of testing worries me. And then there's another thing too, that worries me is the amount of penalties. So he had a few more penalties than the rest of the guys on here. That worries you a little bit, but the tenacity is there. The size is definitely there. The SEC pedigree is there, which you like. So, and when I say 360, most people, most scouts, et cetera, are talking about a guy who has the weight kind of, it's not, a big bellied guy. Like he's pretty evenly distributed in terms of his weight across his entire body. This isn't an Andre Smith thing, or it's a guy who's built pretty well for a guy carrying that much weight. So a lot to like. Again, this is one of those guys, top 20, top 25 type of player. I don't know if we're looking at an Alex Leatherwood. I hate to compare to the name on the uniform or the helmet. But I don't know if we're kind of looking at a similar thing here. The testing really worries me, or lack thereof. But I like the size. Again, I think this could be another good AFC North type of guy because of the size and the tenacity.
I mean, the helmet scouting has already begun. Like Jedrick Wills getting hate from Cleveland. Obviously, Andre Smith and Jonah Williams aren't looked fondly at by Bengals fans. So the narrative with JC Latham is already in place, and it's kind of despicable because I don't see him as a top 25 player. I see him as a top 15 player at worst. I think, again, in a normal tackle class, he probably goes top 10. And when you talk about the lack of testing, one of two things is true. Either he doesn't need to test because he already feels like he's going to go top 15. That's the intel that he got from his
Right.
agent or from whoever's connected with him. Same thing with Marvin Harrison, who's going to go top 5 or 6. Or he would test like Orlando Brown and he would completely tank his draft stock. The film does lie on occasion, 100%. I'm never the guy that always trusts the film over everything. Like, it has a place, but it has lied to people before. I think the film is strong enough to say that JC Latham is not a terrible athlete. I think if he were to test, he would test pretty average in terms of, again, just the raw data. And when you combine that with his density and his size, the testing scores would look a little bit better, but not everyone's going to look at that. They're going to look at a substandard 5 or 40-yard dash compared to the other tackles or wherever the jumps or the flexibility. Like, on tape, he looks like a natural athlete. I think that shows up in his pass protection. He moves very much lighter compared to what his listed weight is. And I think that's why he can last at tackle. Obviously, he has the size and length and experience to do so. He's got to clean up on penalties. I think he's the most penalized per snap out of these top tackles. But again, like, I don't think the athleticism is as big of a concern. Obviously, you would like to see it to believe it, but I think it's more along the lines of if he knows he's going to get drafted high, and if the Bengals have a chance to draft him, I think that's a definite value pick for sure.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point. That was kind of what I was going to say is, maybe the testing is meh, but you look at it for a guy who's 6'6", 360, and you take that into context and you go, okay,
Right.
well, the testing numbers in general don't pop off the screen, but maybe they pop off the screen a bit for a guy that's 360, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point there. I want to talk about, we're kind of going a little long. I don't know if you want to keep spinning, John, or let's see.
We only got a couple
other
left,
names
right?
we would have. So there's Fatanu,
Oh,
Fashanu. We did Morgan. We didn't do Paul, and we didn't do Alt. I kind of want to, if you don't mind, let's maybe for the sake of time, because there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 10 names on here. Let's do two more, and I'm gonna let's see if we can roll it to get them there. But really, who I'm looking at is Fotanu and Fashanu.
yeah.
If you're okay with that, because Fotanu is a guy that we mentioned is having or has had a visit with the Bengals. And I have a lot of thoughts on him so we'll see if we can just kind of land one of those two guys here. So we've let the wheel fall as it may, but we're going to see if we can get it to, no, that's not going to work. All right, let's roll it again.
If you do get
one more,
if you do get the guy from Washington, his name is pronounced Fautanu.
Fautanu.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we would have gotten Alt, but I don't even know if Alt's going to be a realistic possibility anymore. All right, so let's kind of cheat the wheel a little bit. The wheel was fun for a while there. It treated us well. Maybe we can do this again. It was kind of a fun, different thing. But let's do this. Okay. Fautanu, right? That's
Yep.
what you said. Is how to properly pronounce it. Troy Fautanu had a recent visit with the Bengals. This is one of those guys, again, maybe start as a guard, develop into a tackle type of thing, versatility to potentially play a number of positions on the offensive line. To me, we talked about how Fuaga is like my favorite guy in this class for a lot of reasons. Really like the idea of Mims and the Bengals potentially kind of finally going after the little bit more raw athlete type of guy. This to me feels like the opposite, and this to me feels a lot like a Bengals classic offensive lineman pick. A guy who's got a high floor, a guy who has played well on a team that performed well this last year. A high octane offense were the Huskies. And then, of course, the patented Bengals thing with an offensive lineman of kill two birds with one stone. If we can move you around, if we feel we can place you here and get by or get some good play out of you, and then over here, or the old play of, we know you're here. We've already got an established good starter over here. We've got a spot for you right here, even though it's not necessarily in your wheelhouse. We think you have the skill set, the smarts, etc., to get in there. This to me, especially with the visit lined up, this feels like the most logical pick. It may not be the most favorite of a lot of fans or what have you. This feels like the most logical offensive line pick for the Cincinnati Bengals based on their track record and what they seek out of offensive linemen. We talked about Mims and the high-end athleticism and that sort of thing. You look across the board of the Bengals starting offensive line, it's not a high athletic profile of characters. So they haven't valued that. And they've got the free agent guys that don't have those high athletic profiles. They've got size and they've got length, but not a ton of speed or agility, that sort of thing. This guy, I think, just screams classic Bengals offensive line. Safe, versatile, a smart guy who played in a big offense. I don't know. There's a lot of boxes that get checked for me here for the Bengals. I would like it. It's not my favorite guy, but I would like the pick, and I think it would make a lot of sense for the Bengals in a lot of different ways.
So when you say classic Bengals offensive line guy, we're omitting like 2015 to 2021, right? That part's lost in history, right?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I agree with all of that. I think Fautanu would be a really good pick. I think the plan is important though, because I don't want to compare him to Dax Hill, but what is happening with Dax Hill is why some really good players, really good prospects don't pan out, because they get moved for the sake of, there's a hole at this part of the roster, let's just have this guy fill it, where maybe that's not the best for his development, and maybe he has started at a spot that he shouldn't have been at in the first place. I think Fautanu can play tackle or guard. I think he can be the same caliber player at either spot. He's got the length. He's got, like you said, the natural athleticism. Like, he would automatically be the best athlete the Bengals have had on the offensive line in years, maybe over a decade. I don't really know, at least since Andrew Whitworth, but obviously, the size comparisons are not exactly the same, but he's still a phenomenal athlete despite not being the most imposing figure. I think his issues wouldn't get better or worse whether he moved inside. I think it's maybe a excess of aggression, and that can sometimes lead to whiffs and whatnot. And I don't think that's necessarily going away considering how experienced he is. But he has played some at left guard. I think he played like a couple snaps at right tackle, but I think he could make the transition to right tackle for sure. And I might be more confident in him doing that than maybe some of the other true left tackles in this class. He does have multi-positional versatility. I worry that if they draft him and they say, okay, compete with Cordell Volson this year and see how that goes, and he ends up being a good guard, and then the Bengals have a hole at right tackle, that is my concern. Like, because moving him to right tackle is risking getting worse at left guard and potentially getting worse at right tackle if he can't make that transition, and how his development's going to be with all that. So if they do draft him, I think there needs to be a set plan in place, and that needs to befit who Fautanu is as a prospect, because he's a damn good one. I think did we lose Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, a guy that is intriguing, a guy the Bengals have interest in for sure, and a guy that you mentioned 2015 through 2019. Yes, I go back to still, a little bit, and I say this with all due respect, a little bit of the mindset of, square peg round hole type of thing, and we got a guard and we can play him a tackle or vice versa and that sort of thing. But I think this guy has a bright future, and I think if one position doesn't work out for him, another may at the NFL, and because he's versatile and you can use him in a lot of different respects. I like him. I think it would be a solid pick at 18, and one that would potentially provide you with immediate usage, immediate roles. And that's a good thing. The last guy I want to get to, because this was the guy on our mock draft last week that we did that was there, and we opted not to take him. Olu Fashanu, out of Penn State, really tall guy. There's a lot to like frame wise, and looks the part and all that sort of thing. I think he's a player that, I think he could be a nice player in the NFL for sure. I think he could be a nice player. I always get a little worried. We talked about this with Morgan and how he went up against Latu, right? And had a nice showing there, right? If you kick on the Ohio State tape for this guy, it is an absolute disaster of a game for him. And again, it's Ohio State. They've got that kid out there that his name escapes me at the moment. He's insane. And he just ate his lunch. And the reason why I harp on that is because that is a scenario in which he will be potentially coming to the Bengals, and then you're going up against Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and the problems that have plagued the Bengals with those two players specifically then gets highlighted by a guy who has college tape against another premier player. And you go, okay, well, how is that going to translate when you're going up against those guys 4 times a year in total? So that's the thing that worries me about him, because that one tape, that one game, really the rest of the tape is pretty clean. I think the profile is pretty clean. Just that one tape against a premier player, and he just it was not good. It was not good. The rest of it is. So that's where I take a bit of a pause with him.
Yeah, and the same can you said about J.C. Latham, who had a not so good final game against Michigan, and some people hold that against him. And this can happen, right? Like these narratives can pop up with players depending on what tape that you watch. I think the general consensus with Fashanu is that he is a prototypical zone blocking tackle. Like he is such an easy mover, both in pass protection and reach blocking and just getting out into space. Pretty good size as well. 8.5-inch hands is a little bit small, and I think that's sometimes does pop up in terms of evaluating his grip strength. And I think in general, power is not necessarily his game, which makes me consider, what his fit is with his fit with the Bengals offensive line and their current scheme. Obviously, the traditional Frank Pollock offensive lineman does look a lot like Fashanu, and I think that's also something to consider. I think in general, though, like out of all these guys, he probably has the most prospect fatigue. He was the Big Ten, offensive lineman of the year. He was projected to be this top, 14, top 10 pick and now there's talk about him maybe falling to 18. He did suffer an injury at the combine. I think there was another injury on his medical profile during his college career, but just a phenomenally solid player and has always
Yeah.
been right below Joe Alt. And I think if he is the pick at 18, there's definitely enough there to say like, yeah, this can definitely work out, even if he's never played right tackle at the collegiate level before.
Right. Yeah, I know. I there's a lot there. There's a lot there. There's just that one, like I said, that one glaring thing for me where it's like, man, clean resume, clean resume. Oh man, that one.
Right.
And when you come to this, I hate to sound like I'm just obsessing about the AFC North, but when you come to this division, those are the realities. Those are the players you face. Those are it's multiple times a year. So you're going to need to figure that out. And while I think he can be a very, very good player, again, it's just, how do you stack up against other premier players? Maybe that was just one bad game, and it happened to stick with me and others who have followed him a little bit. But I just, that would be my only hesitation. But we went through most of the major tackles with the exception of a couple. But man, that was kind of fun. The wheel did us pretty well.
Yeah.
We had to kind of finagle the last couple in there, but I think we got to 8 total. We said we were going to switch off, but we ended up kind of talking about each guy just because we had other thoughts about him. So we ad-libbed a little bit, but a little fun. Maybe with some other positions, we'll do the same thing going forward here. But we gave you a little mini profiles on some of these guys because the Bengals are doing a lot of due diligence at the offensive tackle in terms of visits, scouting, etc. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. We're going to drop the mic and get out of here. I said we were going to do a shorter show, and we didn't. So we are still at about an hour. And what do you got on the way out for us, John?
Nothing except the Bengals better draft one of these guys, or I hope this show wasn't for nothing.
Yeah, actually, yes. We didn't build the wheel for nothing. Hopefully, one of those.
We
guys.
reinvented it a little bit, and I think it's good.
Do you see any kind of scenario? Let's just say, and this is kind of a final thought for me, I guess, because we didn't talk about Joe Alt a lot. Safest guy and top tackle prospect in this year's class. Do you see a scenario? Let's just say he falls a little further because of quarterbacks going, or trades up the wide receivers. Odunze and Harris. See a scenario wherein the Bengals, especially with a couple extra picks and stuff, maybe package and move up if he falls for some reason outside of the top 10 or at 10, something like that.
I feel like the only way the Bengals trade up in the first round is they don't give up any picks. And they give up like a player instead. It's just, I mean, they haven't done it since what? Kajana? Like they're scarred for life from doing it. Even just one pick. Like I feel like if there was a tackle that I'm in the war room and I'm the GM and I really want, and we can solve this problem that's persisted for a decade and only costs like like that 97 pick, that late 3rd round pick, I would sacrifice that pick just for the tackle. I don't think the Bengals would do it just because there's no precedent for that. So
yeah, I know I'm with you. That's kind of where my thought is. They've shown a little bit more of a propensity to move up of late in other rounds, high rounds. Cam Taylor-Britt, that was a move up. And some other maneuvering there. But yeah, I mean, moving into a top 10 is big move. I'm just saying more if there's an unexpected drop there and he falls outside of the top 10 and you go, man, we just can't. But then again, you look at the depth of this class and you go, well, I mean, maybe there's not that big of a fall off. We feel, if we're the Bengals, from alt to X player, or we feel that this player fits better than what alt, all that kind of stuff. But we will see. The Bengals are probably going trenches the first couple of picks here, and that will be that. But this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Get this show on your favorite audio streamer. Subscribe to our YouTube channel underneath John by that Cincy Jungle icon. Click the show icon. Click the subscribe button. Click the bell. Hit the thumbs up. Do all the things. Catch us live streaming on Twitter, on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, and of course on our YouTube channel. And of course, got to go check out cincyjungle.com and A to Z sports.com, where my guy John's doing all kinds of stuff. You did a 7-round mock recently, right?
I did, and that was based off of several trends, and including our friend Ace Boogie's Prime Board, which you can check out by subscribing to his Twitter. It's been very valuable in terms of predicting Bengals picks, so this is the time of year to get your hands on that data, and yeah, check out the mock. See what you think.
Mon, our friend, he loves it. He said, loved your mock, John. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
the
man.
support, Mon. You've been a listener for a long time, my friend. Appreciate you, and your service as a firefighter. I believe you are a firefighter, if I'm not mistaken. So appreciate your service on that one too, man. Anyway, hey, everybody, take care. Have a good weekend. We're gonna be back with more next week. We've got a lot to get to as the draft nears, but we're having some fun with it. Maybe more wheels to come. I don't know. But take care, John. Have a good weekend, man.
You as well.
Bye.